Let me just start off by saying it's really hard to judge a game that is in early access. The game is obviously not done, and the goal of an early access is to get feedback to improve the game. With that being said, you can still look at the overall concept of the game, what is actually in the early access version, improvement points, and if the game is worth playing right now, or if you should wait. Supporting the developer by buying the game unfinished because you believe in the product is of course always an alternative. The difference in quality of games in early access differ a lot as well. I have played games that are basically done that have launched into early access, and then I've played games that are basically unplayable because of the amount of bugs in the early access version. The dangerous thing here is that you can damage the reputation of the game instead of getting feedback that can help you finish it. The promotion of the game backfires. It's a fine balance. Soulbind lands somewhere in the middle of all this for me. Soulbind is a 2D roguelite where you play as a skeleton known as the Endless. Here you embark on a journey to bring order to this world. There is barely any story in the game as of release into early access. I am sure this is gonna change throughout the development of the game, and I really hope they put more effort into it. I think the world, the enemies, the bosses, the equipment all looks really good, and it would be a shame not to flesh it out more. The one thing I always expect from roguelites or roguelikes is somewhat of a randomness to everything in the game. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's something I expect or want or crave, I guess. The world in Soulbind unfortunately doesn't have any random elements. There seems to be one slight variation of the map, just a tiny difference at a few points, but otherwise it's pretty much the same map you go through every time. It would be really cool to get more of a variation of the map layout, same with the obstacles and enemies, so you get somewhat of a new experience every time you die. Probably the best and coolest thing about the game is the equipment. As I mentioned, you play as a skeleton. The cool thing here is that you don't necessarily equip armor, helmets and boots. You instead switch out your arms, legs, torso and head. The old parts that you don't use or don't want, you can consume as HP instead. I think this is such a cool and nice touch that brings some originality to the game. You can't of course equip and consume parts whenever you want. You instead need to go to altars that are scattered across the map, where you can pause the game and equip and consume what you need to. At the altars you can also spend another currency you get from destroying stuff in the environment, like barrels and coffins. These are permanent abilities for your character and they will persist even when you die. The currency won't persist, so you need to spend it before you die. There is also another way that you can have a better character when you start fresh after dying. There's one more type of altars called altars after Eternal's death. Here you can save gear for your next run. You start with 2 slots and more can be unlocked throughout the ability tree. The last part of enhancing your character is leveling up. When you level up, the game pauses and you get to choose 1 out of 3 buffs. This system is fine and the upgrades are somewhat what you expect in this type of game. The problem I have with the system is that it seems to look at the gear you're using at the time you're leveling up. This means that the options that are presented favor the skills you have on the gear you're using right now, because it always seems to favor the skills I have equipped. I don't know if it's scripted or not, or if I'm just imagining it, but it feels that way every time I level up. And in the game you switch gear quite a lot because you find better pieces all the time, so these skills become unusable at some point. Instead, the best upgrades I found is stats that I always use, like strength or HP upgrades. When I get those, I always choose those, but it's unfortunate when you get skills that you don't really want, or you can't really choose a skill that is relevant to your character overall. There's one weapon in the game as of release into early access. It's a sword with a poison skill. One more weapon is in development and is listed in the game as coming soon. It's a staff, and I wonder how this will change the gameplay, and I'm very interested to try it out. I would definitely like to see more weapons and better weapon tiers dropped on the map, because right now it feels kind of empty with just equipment and no way to enhance your weapon that you're using. So let's talk about the most important part of the game. The gameplay. The overall feeling I have of the game is that it's a bit stiff. Swinging the sword and dodging enemy attacks, all that feels good and works really well. Especially when you're facing one or fewer enemies on a flat surface, that is when the combat is at its best. Everything else feels a bit off. When you jump and attack in midair, the animation reads like you're standing on solid ground, which looks a bit weird and plays a bit weird as well. Grabbing a rope doesn't always work. Attacking an enemy on a small ledge next to you doesn't always work either. The sword just goes through the enemy. After dodging, you kind of glide a bit. I don't know if this is intended, but it feels like an end of an animation is missing, or a transition to running animation is kind of janky. The enemies sometimes hit you when you're out of reach. There's a bit of lag when entering an altar to equip or upgrade. One time the enemies despawned in a place where I needed to kill them to progress. I quit out of the game and loaded in again. The enemy then spawned next to me and instantly killed me. This have happened twice now. It's not a major thing, but it's still annoying when you have progressed quite far in the game. In the equipment menu, I have also have part being equipped in the wrong spot. I mean, sure, these are all small things, but they add up. The game is perfectly playable. Sure, I get something weird happening every run, I would say, but it's not the end of the world. These are of course things that the developer can fix, and it's kind of the point of the early access, to be honest. Sure, they interrupt the flow of the game, and as someone interested in the game, you should be aware before you buy that these type of things are in the game. I think the game has potential without a doubt. Sure, there are a lot of bugs, but they're gonna be fixed most likely. I think more random elements and more build potential would increase the potential of the game so much more. And weapons, yeah, you need more weapons in this game. That is like the major thing I think is missing from the game right now. I can't really recommend anyone to pick up the game right now. If you're interested in the game, play the demo, add this game to your wishlist, and take a look at it when it's closer to full release. As I mentioned, I really like the equipment part of the game. Being a skeleton, equipment parts, consuming them for HP, all that is pretty cool. The abilities for the weapons as well, they're nice. The game has potential, and that kind of concludes my first look at this game. Don't forget to leave a like if you enjoyed this and found it helpful, and if you have tried the game, please let me know in the comments below what you think of the game. I'll see you in the next one. Bye.